You can be charged for protesting with a gun with a felony, even though you don't have a gun. And also this. When your peaceful protest turns into one of these, a riot, what you have on your hip could turn into a felony. And it's critical that you understand not only the 16 states that I'm going to cover here today that ban carrying a firearm at a protest, at a parade, at a march, at a demonstration, but you also need to be aware of the fact that basically all 50 states have a riot or unlawful assembly law. And what does that mean for your First Amendment rights and your Second Amendment rights? Guys, let's get into it. There are 16 states that, to varying degrees, do ban the possession of firearms at a demonstration, at a protest, at some sort of First Amendment event. We're going to cover that list at the end because more importantly than that, you're going to need to know this. When is a riot a riot? Why do you need to know that? I believe all 50 states have some sort of law that classifies an event as a riot, and you're going to want to know that because it's not going to be too hard for a protest to turn into a riot. And then if you've got a riot on your hands, a legal riot on your hands, well, that might change everything. And you need to know about it. Otherwise, maybe a felony. Exactly like what happened in Minnesota. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Minnesota Statute 609.71, riot. Minnesota has 3 different legal classifications for riot. Stick with me. I'm going to make this really simple and easy. It starts with the lowest level, riot 3rd degree. Basically what Minnesota says, and there's a link in the description box down below to the actual statute if you want to peruse it yourself. But what Minnesota says is that when 3 or more people are assembled and they disturb the public peace by an intentional act or threat of an unlawful force or violence to person or property, then each participant is guilty of riot, and it's a misdemeanor. They're looking at up to almost a year in jail and about $1,000 or both. You take the same thing, 2nd degree riot is what we're going to. When 3 or more persons are assembled, disturb the peace by an intentional act or threat of unlawful force or violence to person or property, each participant who is armed with a dangerous weapon or knows that any other participant is armed with a dangerous weapon is guilty of riot in the 2nd degree and may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 5 years or payment of fine of not more than $10,000 or both. So did you catch that? Any participant who is armed, felony, straight to jail. Up to 5 years. But what else did it say? Any participant who knows that another participant is armed. So let's be realistic here. If someone's concealed carrying, you've got plausible deniability. Let's just leave it at that. But if someone's open carrying, there's really no plausible deniability. Yeah, you can say I didn't see that guy with that AR or whatever it is. But you see the problem here. If you're around someone who's open carrying, and if you're in a situation where there's a legal argument for the fact that this is a riot, you are committing the felony, even though you do not have a single firearm on you. Do you see the tripwire? Do you see the trap? Felony. Be aware. Keep in mind these hidden dangers, and there are many more like it. If you want me to cover more, let me know down in the comment section below. Now, you got to understand how easy it is, legally speaking, to be disturbing the peace. And again, it's going to be so important here to check your local listings. I don't have time to cover all 50 states. So you're going to need to understand where these thresholds hit depending upon where you are, your place in time. That's your responsibility to figure that out. But all those whistles, all the honking of the horns, is that free speech or is that disturbing the peace? Can it be both? It might be free speech as it pertains to law enforcement. It might be disturbing the peace as it relates to the homes, properties, and businesses that are around there. Do you see how you have that two-edged argument? Now, rest assured, a defense attorney is going to have some, I believe, pretty strong arguments to push in court for the fact that, look, blowing a whistle, these sorts of things, this really should fall, given the context, given the scenario, much more so on this is the 1A side. This is freedom of speech. This is protected speech. But as soon as you've got people who are impeding traffic, a lot of states have impeding traffic or impeding thoroughfares, things like that. Those are often also triggering language to turn a protest, a demonstration, into some sort of unlawful assembly, a riot, whatever it is that your state calls it. Suddenly being armed, which may have been legal in the first place, flips to being illegal. Not in every state, not in every place, not in every time. Check your listings. So how might this, as an example here, because I know everybody wants to know, apply to Mr. Pretty in Minnesota? Well, look, Mr. Pretty was part of a larger group. He may not have known a single other person in that group, but for law purposes, we've got all these different people who have assembled here. Okay, I think the prosecutor is going to win that part, that this is an assembly. This is a group of people. Let's assume the prosecutor loses this whole honking horns, whistles, screaming, and all that. That falls on the free speech side, because if the prosecutor wins that, then we're in felony territory. But let's just assume that they lose that. Question, has anybody around there made some sort of intentional, or have they threatened unlawful force to person or property? My guess is that someone probably somewhere, law enforcement will say, did just that. And as a result, that may enable law enforcement to paint with a broad brush. This whole thing's a riot. Now someone who's armed, you're committing a felony. Do you see how quickly that line can move? Now, let me be very clear. I am in no way, shape, or form suggesting that that would change any of the legalities about whether or not Mr. Pretty's shooting was lawfully justified by Border Patrol or not. No claims are being made with respect to that. What I am claiming, what I am staking my flag on, is the fact that, look, these laws are out there. You can go to a lawful protest. One person can change something. It's always that one bad apple. And suddenly you are the one that is committing a felony. I'm not saying don't be armed. We're going to get to the list of states that prohibit demonstration and exercising your First Amendment rights while armed. But you need to know the laws and you need to be cautious about it. If you're wondering what's the quick hits on what most of these riot laws look like, I've not looked at every state, but I've looked at a handful of states to try to get the gist to them. It goes something like this. Most state riot statutes require basically 3 elements to them. You first see multiple participants. So typically the threshold is 2 to 5 people. I often see 3, but 2 to 5 people or more, depending upon the state. Second, you have some sort of conduct. That could be disorderly, violent, could be threatening conduct, something like that. You have to have the conduct element. And then third, we've got the intent or knowledge. In other words, the assembled group acting with this purpose. So if you show up at someone's church and if you're the bad apple and you just start breaking something, that doesn't automatically turn the entire assembly into a riot. That's just you committing a crime. Likewise, that drunk at a baseball game or football game, if they start doing something that's violent, let's say, that doesn't change the entire assembly into the violence. So you can see some of the subtle gradation points of, look, this is a lone individual versus this is a group. But you can likewise see the pushback from the prosecutor and the cops. You be the judge about who's going to win. I will warn you, though, for a lot of folks, you're going to be fighting this with your own dollars in court, with your own reputation, missed time off of work, stress, missed sleep, you name it. So who really wins at the end of the day? Now, again, definitions do vary from state to state, but this is a pretty common formulation that requires a conduct that disturbs the peace, creates a risk of public terror or alarm, or threatens violence with the apparent ability to carry out that violence. Check your local listings. Very important. Now let's get to the states with protest-specific firearm restrictions, because you're going to need to know this. I'm going to say up front, I am not condoning or suggesting that these laws are constitutional. I think that there's a very, very, very strong argument on both First Amendment grounds and Second Amendment grounds for the fact that these laws are absolutely unconstitutional. Absolutely unconstitutional. But that said, according to some resources I checked out, here is the list. The first group are states that ban both concealed carry as well as open carry at protests. We have Alabama, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, the District of Columbia, we're lumping in there as a state. Then we're going to states that ban only open carry at protests. Some of these might be just because they ban open carry. California, Connecticut, Florida, Washington State. Lastly, we have states with partial restrictions on bringing firearms to protests. We've got Arkansas, which applies only to participants in permitted demonstrations, but I think Arkansas is one of those states that have enhanced concealed carry weapon holders, and those folks might be exempt. As always, check your local listings. Louisiana and Mississippi, permitted demonstrations / parades only. And Nebraska, at political rallies and fundraisers. Those are the partial restrictions. Now you have to check your states to see which way this all goes. It feels pretty crazy that we've got to know, is this gathering of people, is it permitted? Is it not? Is this legally a parade, or is it just some people going down the street because they're really happy? You get the idea here. But this could be the difference between you committing a 5-year prison sentence felony and it being completely fine. The last thing I just want to mention to you is the fact that a lot of these states also have unlawful assembly disbanding orders. What am I talking about? I'm talking about something to the effect that says, look, once something has crossed a threshold, once a group of people have crossed a threshold in the eyes of law enforcement, if they give the order to disperse, and if you don't, that can likewise change the legal restriction and move the legal boundary about what's happening with the group of people, and potentially that firearm on your hip, how legal or illegal that might be. So be mindful of all of these things. Be safe, understand your rights, make the right call, because I assure you, you may have to live with it one way or the other for the rest of your life. Let me know what you all think about this, and the discussion down below can get pretty spicy. This one's probably going to be no different. What do you think about the Alex Preddy revelations? What do you think about that new video that emerged from the week before, which he definitely was armed, definitely was committing a Class 2 riot, if this indeed was him? Again, that in no way, shape, or form I think has any bearing whatsoever on the shooting itself. But do you see that tying off? Do you think that would play with the jury? And what do you think about this whole thou shall not mix First Amendment and Second Amendment that we see being pushed by a bunch of different states and jurisdictions? We're going to close with our ever popular quote of the day. Quote, Congress has no power to disarm the militia. Their swords and every other terrible implement of the soldier are the birthright of an American, end quote. That's from Tench Cox, 1789, who, if you didn't know who that is, he's an important early American politician from Philadelphia, and he was a leader who wrote heavily about economics, and he really helped to develop a lot of the perspectives concerning the right to keep and bear arms from the Founding Fathers era. I appreciate you sticking around. I will see you in the next one. Take care. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, please feel free to check out some of our other great content, and we'll see you in the next one.